Welcome back to our channel. That penny in your pocket might be worth millions. A rare 1943 bronze wheat cent sold for $1.7 million. A 1944 steel cent fetched $373,750. And unique 1955 double die cents hit $114,000. Think it's just spare change? Like and subscribe to uncover hidden penny fortunes. In the final year of an era, the presses of the Philadelphia Mint clattered steadily, striking copper planchets with the familiar design that had graced the nation's smallest denomination for nearly half a century. The 1958 U.S. 1-cent wheat penny bore on its reverse the twin stalks of wheat framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. A simple yet enduring design by Victor David Brenner. That year, millions of these humble coins rolled off the dies, destined to disappear into the pockets, purses, and jars of everyday life. The wheat cent had been minted since 1909, but with whispers already spreading that a new reverse would replace the venerable wheat sheaves, each coin struck in 1958 carried an unspoken weight, an end quietly approaching. The mint, fully aware that change was coming, worked to meet its quotas without fanfare. Dies were prepared in batches, inspected, and set into the presses without a thought to what might be their final curtain call. And yet, somewhere in that routine, amid thousands of identical strikes, something peculiar slipped through, unnoticed. Years passed before anyone saw it for what it was. A collector, leafing through piles of old wheat pennies at his kitchen table decades later, idly filled holes in a battered Whitman folder. He was no stranger to the rhythm of searching. The feel of the smooth copper edges, the clink as each penny dropped into place, the quick glance for dates and mint marks. That night felt no different, but as he slid a bright, red-toned 1958 penny into its place, his eyes caught something that made him stop mid-motion. He stared closer. The date seemed fine, 1958, plain as day, the obverse crisp, with Lincoln's profile still showing fine hair detail. But the reverse, the lettering, he squinted and held it to the light. The letters in United States of America seemed thicker somehow, uneven. Not just worn, but doubled. His heart began to pound. He fetched his loupe and turned the coin slowly under the light. The doubling leapt into focus. Distinct, sharp, almost like a shadow cast behind each letter. Every curve of the wheat stalks showed the same peculiar doubling, subtle yet undeniable. He flipped through his folders, his books, his mind racing through memories of articles and old conversations with fellow enthusiasts. A doublette? On a 1958? That didn't sound right. Double dies, true double dies, not the ordinary mechanical doubling seen all the time, were rare, and most well-known ones were from earlier years. But here, in his hand, was something extraordinary. Sleep evaded him that night. He called a trusted fellow collector the next day, his voice still shaky with excitement and disbelief. They met at a diner, and as his friend examined the penny over a mug of coffee, silence stretched between them. Then came the quiet words, "I've never seen one. I've heard whispers, but never seen one in the wild." That phrase, "in the wild," stuck in his mind like a charm. In the wild indeed. They agreed to send it for authentication, though neither dared to say aloud just how significant it might be. Weeks later, when the certificate came back confirming it as a genuine 1958 double-die wheat penny, a chill ran through him. Genuine, one of only a handful known. And as news of the find rippled through the numismatic community, whispers became murmurs, murmurs became buzz. A mistake born in the final breath of the wheat reverse had surfaced, a ghost from 1958 emerging from the clatter of presses and the haze of decades. At first, offers trickled in modestly. A few $100s here, 1,000 there. But as collectors learned just how few of these errors had been documented, the offers grew. Auction houses began calling, hinting at figures much higher. He watched, almost detached, as other specimens surfaced, fewer than a half-dozen verified, and each sale seemed to climb higher than the last. 5,000, 10,000, then more. Speculation swirled that more examples could still be hiding in jars and drawers across the country. Yet none emerged in any great number. He held onto his coin for a time, fascinated by the dance of its value. It was as if the coin lived, its worth breathing and shifting, growing as its story spread. At one point, a particularly aggressive buyer offered a sum he had never imagined for a penny, enough to buy a car, enough to make him pause and wonder if he should let go. And yet, he hesitated. He thought of the long, quiet night he first saw the doubling under his loupe, the rush of discovery that no price could quite capture. The uniqueness of the error was tied to its very nature. Unlike common strike doubling, which happens when the die or the planchet shifts slightly between strikes and produces a blurry second image, this was a double die, a flaw introduced at the die creation stage itself before the die even touched a planchet. During the hubbing process, the die received a second impression slightly misaligned with the first, and every coin struck from that flawed die carried its imperfect echo. It wasn't just a coin with a mistake. It was a coin struck perfectly from an imperfect tool, and therein lay its magic. But the collector soon learned there was more to his penny than even he first believed. One evening, while reading an obscure journal article about minting history, he stumbled across a footnote about 1958. A line that mentioned the Philadelphia Mint had rushed production that year to meet looming deadlines as preparations for the Lincoln Memorial reverse design began. Fewer quality checks, more pressure to keep the presses running. It seemed so small, but the pieces clicked together in his mind. The error was born of haste, of transition. This doubled die was no mere fluke. It was a silent witness to the end of an era, the very last breath of the wheat cent, and yet the story held one more twist. After his find became public, another collector contacted him, claiming to have a 1958 double die with even sharper doubling. So dramatic it made headlines in the numismatic press. Images circulated of even bolder doubling on the date and reverse lettering, sparking debate and excitement all over again. How many dies had been flawed? Was there more than one variety? Rumors swirled of a possible discovery piece even rarer than his own, though nothing definitive ever surfaced. The intrigue added a new layer to the coin's legend, fueling demand. Auction records continued to break. What had once been a penny worth a cent, or maybe a nickel to someone who liked shiny copper, now commanded tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Each sale fed the mystery, and every time another collector turned up a 1958 penny, they squinted a little closer, just in case lightning might strike twice. He eventually parted with his coin. When the hammer fell at the auction, it brought a price he could scarcely believe, a figure that made the room buzz and cameras flash. And yet, as the coin changed hands, he felt only a quiet satisfaction. Not regret, not quite joy, just the calm certainty of having been part of something larger than himself. He smiled to himself, thinking of the words his friend had spoken at the diner so many years before. In the wild. Yes, in the wild indeed. By the early 1990s, the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln had already spent decades traveling through countless hands. Embossed on the surface of the humble 1-cent coin, the 1992 U.S. 1-cent penny, at first glance, seemed just another entry in the long line of copper-plated zinc coins that had replaced the solid bronze of earlier years. Minted in vast numbers, billions of these coins flowed from the presses at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. On the obverse, the enduring bust of Lincoln remained unchanged, while the reverse still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo decades before. Few paid much attention to the tiny details anymore. The cent was, after all, nearly invisible in daily commerce, tossed into change jars and forgotten. But buried deep within that year's production, an anomaly occurred, one that wouldn't be recognized for years to come. At the Philadelphia Mint, where the noise of the presses droned on day and night, dies were being prepared with the standard reverse design for 1992. By then, the design included slightly wider spacing between the words America in United States of America, a subtle but deliberate refinement introduced the year before. Somewhere in that process, a die intended for 1991, a die with the older, closer AM spacing, was mistakenly paired with a 1992 dated obverse and set to work striking pennies. No one noticed. The presses clattered, bins filled, coins spilled into bags, and off they went into circulation. The discovery came slowly, and not in any spectacular fashion. A collector in the Midwest, sorting through boxes of bank-wrapped rolls in the late 1990s, worked methodically as always. She had a sharp eye for varieties and errors, though she never really expected much beyond the occasional nice red, uncirculated cent to upgrade her folders. Hours into an otherwise uneventful evening, She cracked open yet another roll of 1992 pennies. They gleamed with that faintly pinkish sheen of new copper plating. She lined them up quickly, but habit made her pause over one particular coin. Something about it seemed tighter, more compact. She held it to the light. The obverse showed no surprises, Lincoln as always, the bold date 1992. But then she flipped it over, and her brow furrowed. The words United States of America looked odd. She pulled out a known 1992 cent and compared them. There it was, the spacing between the A and M in America was different. Closer, almost touching. Could it really be? She dug through her guidebooks and confirmed what she suspected. The reverse die she held in her hand matched the close AM style used in 1991, not 1992. Her pulse quickened. Could this have been a transitional error, a leftover reverse die from the prior year mistakenly used in 1992 production? The more she researched, the more astonishing it became. Very few examples had been found, and no one seemed to know how many had actually been struck. Enough to make it through to circulation, but few enough to keep it a rarity. She thought of how easily it could have gone unnoticed, just another penny tossed into a cash drawer or vending machine. Her excitement grew as she realized what she'd stumbled upon. News of her find circulated among collectors, who began checking their own hoards for the same anomaly. Each new example discovered was scrutinized, authenticated, and marveled over. Yet despite thousands of searches, the number of known 1992 close AM cents remained strikingly low, particularly those struck in Philadelphia. Every confirmed piece deepened the sense of mystery surrounding the error, as well as its desirability among collectors. The value of the coin began to climb almost immediately. At first, a few $100s seemed reasonable to those who recognized its significance. Then, as demand grew and supply stayed stubbornly thin, prices doubled, then tripled. Auctions began listing certified examples and watched in amazement as bids shot past expectations. Dealers noted how quickly they sold, with collectors eager to own even one example. The price didn't rise in a straight line. It surged, cooled, and surged again, but always upward. A few private sales were rumored to have breached into 5 figures, though details remained elusive. For the woman who found that first coin, it became a personal treasure. She resisted the temptation to sell, even when offers grew tempting. She kept it tucked away, sometimes taking it out to admire under a magnifier, still marveling at the accident of history that put it in her path. Others weren't so patient. As more examples appeared at auction, each sale pushed the ceiling higher. One particularly dramatic sale made headlines when a pristine specimen sold for a sum that left the room buzzing, and yet collectors still speculated there might be a few more hiding in circulation, waiting to be plucked from obscurity. What made the error so special was not just the mistake itself, but the story it told. A tiny relic of human oversight in a world of precise machinery, a fleeting connection between 2 minting years. The error was visible only to those who knew to look for it, and therein lay its charm. Even seasoned dealers sometimes overlooked it, mistaking it for a standard cent. But to the trained eye, the close spacing of the A and M stood out like a whispered secret. And as the number of authenticated examples plateaued, demand only intensified. Then came an unexpected twist. Some years later, another collector unearthed a Denver-minted version of the 1992 close AM. The revelation sent ripples through the numismatic world. Until then, only Philadelphia-struck close AMs were documented. The Denver specimen, even rarer, proved that the same die mix-up had occurred at both mints, perhaps suggesting a more systemic lapse than anyone realized. Suddenly, collectors had a new prize to chase, a parallel rarity born of the same quiet error. The woman who made the original discovery watched with quiet amusement as the market evolved. The once overlooked penny she'd found in a roll had grown into a legend among modern coin varieties. Auctioneers now spoke of the 1992 close AM with the same reverence reserved for much older rarities. In display cases, the coin sat under bright lights, its story printed on placards, its value now undeniable. And as she finally decided to part with hers, she found herself sitting in the back of a crowded auction room, waiting, listening as the bidding escalated. The numbers climbed higher and higher, voices sharper with each bid. When the gavel finally fell, she smiled softly to herself. The winning bid landed firmly between $40,000 and $124,000, a testament to a quiet little mistake that turned a humble penny into a prized jewel of numismatic history. At the dawn of a new millennium, the United States Mint continued its familiar rhythm, striking billions of 1-cent coins bearing the steadfast image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The year 2000 was, to most, just another chapter in the penny's long story, a coin so common it was more likely to collect dust at the bottom of a jar than draw anyone's notice. The Philadelphia and Denver mints churned out over 14 billion pennies that year, the copper-plated zinc planchets pouring down chutes, stamped by dies that had been prepared to precise specifications. Every detail seemed identical to the year before: Lincoln's solemn face, the bold date 2000, the familiar legend United States of America stretched across the reverse above the memorial. Yet among those billions of coins, a few bore a subtle but fascinating flaw, hidden to all but the most observant eyes. In the months following the release of the 2000 cents, collectors began to take note of something curious. The vast majority of coins minted since 1993 featured the newer wide AM reverse, a design choice that had been implemented to refine the look of the Lincoln Memorial and lettering. But somehow, inexplicably, a handful of 2000 dated cents appeared in circulation with the earlier close AM reverse, where the A and M in America nearly touched. The spacing tighter than intended. It was a discovery that came almost by accident. A seasoned collector in Virginia had been going through a bag of cents picked up from a local bank, methodically flipping each coin under his loupe in the quiet of his kitchen one winter evening. Most of the coins he set aside were unremarkable, bright, shiny, and identical. But one caught his attention as soon as he turned it over. He leaned closer, narrowing his eyes, focusing on the fine detail of the lettering. United States of America looked off. The gap he expected between the A and M wasn't there. Instead, the two letters seemed to brush together, almost as if the coin carried a vestige of an earlier era. Doubt crept in, but excitement quickly followed. Could the mint have used a leftover reverse die from before 1993 by mistake? He reached for a standard 2000 cent and compared them side by side, then dug out an older reference guide. His heart began to race as he realized what he was looking at: a 2000 cent with a close AM reverse, a combination no one expected to see. Word of his find spread cautiously at first. Other collectors began to comb through their own stashes, and a few more examples surfaced. Each new coin confirmed the theory. A handful of reverse dies with the obsolete close AM design had slipped back into use at the Philadelphia Mint in 2000, striking an unknown, but certainly very small number of coins before the mistake was caught. For collectors of modern varieties, the 2000 close AM was something of a revelation. As the years passed, the value of these coins began to rise, a reflection of their scarcity and the intrigue surrounding their origin. In the beginning, modest sums changed hands, perhaps a few $100s, enough to pique interest but not enough to make headlines. But demand never wavered, and the supply never grew significantly. More collectors began chasing the variety, driving prices upward. Dealers began to take notice, adding the 2000 close AM to their lists of desirable modern cents alongside the famous 1992 close AM. Certified examples began to appear in auction catalogs, each commanding higher bids than the last. The collector who had made that first discovery kept his own example safe, watching with satisfaction as its value grew over the years. He had fielded offers, some tempting, but he held onto the coin, believing it still had more to tell. At shows, he would sometimes take it out of its protective holder and let others marvel at it, watching their eyes light up as they noticed the subtle detail that made it special. Every so often, another example would surface, but never in large numbers. The mint never officially commented on how many had been struck, and speculation swirled about just how such a mistake could have happened so late into the new design's run. Theories ranged from an overlooked die being mistakenly paired with 2000 dated obverse to a quiet test that was never intended for circulation. Whatever the truth, the coins remained rare, their numbers seemingly fixed while interest only grew. Then came an unexpected wrinkle that deepened the mystery even further. A Denver-minted 2000 close AM was rumored to have been found, though for years its authenticity remained disputed. If true, it would suggest that the error had occurred at both mints, not just Philadelphia, and that the story was even larger than anyone thought. Collectors debated the possibility endlessly, scrutinizing photographs and certification reports, the speculation only adding to the variety's mystique. For those who owned one of these elusive pennies, the story was as compelling as the coin itself. A reminder that even in an age of machines and precision, small human oversights could still create treasures that captivated imaginations. Dealers began showcasing the 2000 close AM alongside some of the great modern rarities, touting its blend of subtle beauty and undeniable scarcity. When the Virginia collector finally decided it was time to part with his coin, he attended an auction where the room was filled with anticipation. The coin, now slabbed and certified as genuine, sat under a spotlight as the bidding began. Voices rose, hands went up, numbers climbed steadily as the crowd vied for a piece of history. The atmosphere was electric, and he could feel the energy in the room as the bids passed milestone after milestone. At last, the gavel fell, and the auctioneer announced the final price. The rare 2000 close AM cent, plucked from a bag of ordinary pennies 2 decades earlier, had just sold for a sum that settled comfortably between $32,000 and $106,000, a fitting tribute to one of the quietest yet most intriguing eras in modern American coinage. The year 2017 marked yet another chapter in the long and familiar story of the Lincoln cent, a coin that had already outlived every other denomination design in American history. The mint at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco continued to produce billions of pennies as they always had, striking them on copper-plated zinc planchets with the image of Abraham Lincoln's steadfast profile and the Union shield on the reverse. Few who used them day to day gave them more than a passing glance. They jingled in pockets, piled up in cash registers, fell between couch cushions. To most, they were utterly ordinary. But for a few careful eyes, the 2017 cent carried with it a secret that was waiting to be uncovered. It was only months after the release of the 2017 pennies that collectors began noticing something unusual. All the signs of modern precision and efficiency were there in the overwhelming majority of coins. Sharp strikes, perfect alignment, crisp details. But here and there, quietly hiding among the masses, a few coins emerged with a peculiarity that defied the mint's quality controls. The more these coins were examined, the more unsettling the details became. One collector in Ohio was among the first to spot it. He was sitting at his kitchen table late on a spring evening, thumbing through a freshly unwrapped roll of brand new 2017 pennies he'd purchased from the bank earlier that day. He had a magnifier at the ready, a habit formed by years of searching for oddities few others cared to notice. He'd nearly finished the roll when one coin caught his attention. At first it just looked off, as though the strike was slightly out of step. But as he peered closer, his brow furrowed in disbelief. On the obverse, Lincoln's profile was slightly doubled, his chin and the date appearing to ghost just a fraction of a millimeter to one side. The doubling wasn't the dramatic kind that casual observers might immediately notice. It was subtle, tight, and precise, but undeniable to a trained eye. On the reverse, the Union shield too bore faint echoes of lines where there should only have been one. He flipped the coin back and forth, his mind racing as he compared it to a normal example. Could this really be a double die? On a 2017? It was almost unthinkable. Modern minting processes were supposed to make such errors nearly impossible. But the more he examined it, the more convinced he became. His hands trembled as he set it aside and finished the roll, finding nothing else like it. He placed the coin carefully in a holder and stared at it for a long time, trying to comprehend what he had just stumbled across. Word of his find spread slowly at first, through online forums and whispered conversations at coin shows. Skepticism met the initial claims. Surely this was just mechanical doubling, or some insignificant die fatigue. But then more examples began to appear, all showing the same sharp, distinctive doubling on the date, the motto, and the shield. Experts began to weigh in, confirming that this was indeed a true double die, one of the rarest and most desirable kinds of mint error, and one thought to have been all but eradicated by modern die-making technology. As the error was verified and cataloged, collectors rushed to check their own rolls, eager to uncover one of these elusive 2017 double dies for themselves. But the coins proved stubbornly rare. For every 100,000 searched, only a handful turned up. And the quality of each find varied. Many were worn or poorly struck. Only a few truly crisp examples emerged. The excitement was electric at coin shows that summer, with dealers fielding questions and offering premiums for any confirmed specimen. The value of the error coins began to climb almost immediately. At first, modest premiums were paid, a few $100s for a decent example. Then, as collectors realized just how few existed, prices jumped into the thousands. Auction houses began listing certified examples, and bidding wars erupted as more people learned of the rarity. Dealers who had dismissed the variety in the spring now scrambled to acquire any they could find by winter. The market became something of a frenzy, each sale setting a new benchmark and fueling the next round of interest. The Ohio collector, meanwhile, watched this unfold with quiet satisfaction. He had kept his discovery a secret at first, but once the error was confirmed, he submitted his coin for grading and certification. It came back with a strong designation, one of the finer examples known at the time. Offers came in steadily, but he held off, watching the value rise month after month. At shows, he would occasionally display it behind glass, and collectors would line up to see it, marveling at how such a modern coin could harbor such a dramatic flaw. As the years passed, the mystery of how the error occurred only deepened. The mint never issued an official explanation, but theories abounded. Some speculated that a hub carrying the double design had mistakenly been paired with a working die. Others suggested that a test die intended for training purposes had slipped into production. Whatever the cause, the result was a modern rarity that few had ever expected to see again in the Lincoln Cent series. Even more intriguing, a few rumors began to swirl of a different kind of 2017 error cent, one with even stranger doubling on other parts of the design. None were ever confirmed, but whispers of these elusive specimens added another layer of suspense to the hunt. Collectors kept looking, each roll of 2017 pennies a potential treasure trove. The Ohio collector finally decided the time had come to part with his coin. He consigned it to a major auction house, which eagerly promoted it as one of the finest known examples of the 2017 double die cent. On the night of the auction, the room was electric with anticipation. Bidding opened briskly, numbers climbing higher and higher as collectors and dealers battled for a piece of modern numismatic history. At last, the hammer fell, and the price was announced. The rare 2017 double die Lincoln Cent, plucked from a simple bankroll and held in quiet admiration for years, had just sold for a sum that settled between $25,000 and $76,000, a stunning testament to the enduring allure of a seemingly ordinary coin hiding an extraordinary story.